Engineering in IISc Bangalore in 2003 and completed his doctorate in Center for Electronic Design and Technology, IISc Bangalore in 2010. And presently working as a professor and head NIT Calicut, and he has more than 23 years experience in teaching, and he supervised many bachelor degree theses and BTech final year students. And sir is a supervised master's thesis in industry collaboration with the MTech final year students. And his outreach activities. SAR is a reviewer for various international journals and conference, and resource person for various faculty development programs, and is a MTech thesis examiner in various institutions, and SAR PhD thesis examiner for various universities, and doctor committee chairman for research scholars, and SAR presented several papers in reputed international conferences like ICON, IASC, CPE, and DENCON. And SAR acted as a session chair in international conference like ISIE, ICON, CPE, and DENCON. And SAR research work, SAR area of research is power electronics and drive. And SAR published nearly 32 papers. Out of 32, 30 is SCA and 2 is Scopus. And number of citations in the last 2 years is 254. And H index is 15. And number of PhD scholars completed is 5. And 7 PhD scholars are ongoing. And number of MTech thesis is 35 completed. Next, SAR received a sponsored project from KSCTE around 6.7 lakhs and submitted a Spark proposal worth of 94.48 lakhs. And administrative responsibilities. SAR is an NSS program officer for 2 years and vice chairman admission in 2005 and 2006 and faculty in charge for Adventure Club and Nature Club, etc. And assistant recruiting officer for SAEC elections and TU quality improvement programming co-coordinator for 2 years and FRG coordinator for 3 years and vice chairman PG admission 2012 to 2014 and associate dean there from 2013 to 2015. And SAR is a chairperson PG admissions from November 2015 to November 2018. And SAR is the NBA co-coordinator from 2015 onwards and member of IQAC and chairman ETL. And presently SAR is an HOD EED NIT Calicut from 2020 onwards. And SAR has a various skill development program, that is MATLAB and Simulink and VHDL and PCD FCPA, and he knows assembly language TMS 320 F2 812, and he know how to interface with the assembly language with the power electronics control. On this, I welcome you, sir. One second for this FDP. Now I request Dr. Richard sir to hand over the session. So please handle the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Senthil, for a long introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Audible, sir. You are audible, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, no problem with the sound, right? Okay. Anyway, thank you for the very long introduction. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. Thank you. It's my privilege to.
I think I will share my PPT first.
Yes, sir. You can share.
Okay.
Bipin, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Sir, can
proceed. No,
share
yes,
his
sir.
PPT.
Okay.
Yes, sir, your presentation is visible, sir.
Okay, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I hope all of you can see the screen in a presentation in full screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. I think I will switch off my video. That will be better so that there won't be any network problem. Okay, that's fine. Okay, good afternoon once again. I hope at least for the next 1.5 hours, we will have a quite interactive session. I don't like to have a very one-sided kind of interaction. So basically, I'm going to discuss about inverters for electric vehicle systems. Basically, to tell a bit about in the PWM point of view regarding the evolution of square wave inverters to the sinusoidal output waveform inverters. This is what I'm planning to do. So it's a kind of interactive session that I'm planning. So whenever you are having anything to ask, you can directly unmute yourself and ask. There is no problem. That's fine. Nothing to worry about it. I like to have an interactive session rather than a one-sided communication happening from my side. Okay. No, I know that it is very difficult to have an online session in which to have a two-sided communication, but try to make it as what you call interactive as possible. Okay. So okay. Now we are going to discuss about electric vehicle. So we will start with a discussion on future of mobility in India itself, because e-mobility is going to revolutionize the mobility sector as far as India as well and globally. You are going to see a kind of a what you call a quantum leap as far as the electric vehicle is concerned. Okay. So four technology driven trends are disrupting the automotive industry globally. Okay. So what are those things? I think you can see the figure. So there is four pillars that you can see which is going to rule the mobility sector in the future. One is called connectivity, shared mobility, autonomous driving, and electrification. So connectivity, you know, the connectivity is how it is going to affect. I'm not going to speak more about it. Shared mobility, and already it is present. I hope all of you are aware with the kind of apps and the cab services that are already present in many cities and metros in India, like Uber, Ola, like that. Many are there. Okay. Then autonomous driving is also a kind where there is no driver is going to be there, and but we will not tell much about. But as far as we are concerned, I'm going. Sorry, I am more concerned about the fourth point, which is electrification. So electrification is going to be one of the major aspect that is going to drive the future of mobility in India as well as global scenario. Okay. So the global automotive industry is on the verge of disruption due to the outcome of the four technology-driven trends, as I have already mentioned: electrification, shared mobility, connectivity, and autonomous driving. But as electrical engineers, we are more focused on electrification aspects, where the vehicle itself is going to run on electrical energy instead of the fossil fuel based IC engines. Okay. So as far as electric vehicles are concerned, I hope all of you are aware that in the present scenario, electric vehicles are pretty rare. As when you look at the roads of Indian cities, you will see few number of EVs coming into it. There are many reasons for it. One is the cost of EV, then the driving range, and all those what you call total cost of ownership TCO. It's not that attractive. Now, how can you make it more attractive? For that, we need to come up with something called stricter emission regulations. Lower battery cost definitely will decrease the cost of the vehicle. More widely available fast charging infrastructure. That is another important aspect. You need to have a lot of infrastructure or charging infrastructure where it is possible to have a very fast charging. Okay. Increasing consumer acceptance. That is another thing. Whenever you try to buy, you will ask, okay, before buying, you will ask a person who has already used it. So the consumer acceptance is an integral and an important part of it. Then the better total cost of ownership will create new and strong momentum for the adoption of EVs in the near future. So these are some of the points that may increase the takers for electric vehicles in India. Okay. This is a kind of a projection. By 2030, the share of EVs could range from 40 to 50% of new vehicle sale. It is less than 5% presently. It can increase to 40 to 50%. That is a kind of graph people are predicting, growth graph. Adoption rates could be the highest in the developed cities with strict emission regulations and higher consumer incentives. Definitely, that is going to be the case where the cities are going to adopt EVs at a faster pace. Definitely, you can give consumer indexes, incentives higher, tax breaks, special parking, driving people, discounted electricity, etc. Penetration may be slower in small towns and rural areas with less charging infrastructure and a higher dependence on driving range. That is another aspect that is lacking as far as the EVs are concerned. Still, you can see that there are EVs which are having driving range as high as 500 to 550 kilometers presently. Continuous improvements in battery and charging technology could minimize such local differences, and EVs are expected to gain more market share from conventional vehicles by the next 10 years. During the next 10 years, we are going to see a quantum leap as far as the adoption of EV is concerned. This is, sorry, this is the kind of comparison provided by McKinsey and Co. Through an analysis. You can see that this is the major important point. The running cost is 4 to 10 times as that of an S1. So the additional power demand is only going to be 3 to 4%. The car breaks even with a hatchback 6 to 7 years. The reduction in charging time 75%. These are last 3 years. These are the things that are making so on. Then lot of companies are investing lot of money in EV. New EV launches announced, almost 200 models are going to come. So this is a kind of lot of car manufacturers are putting lot of effort and in coming up with newer EV models which are what you call going to give you better TCO, total cost of ownership. So real hurdles to EV adoption in case of Indian scenario, lack of charging infrastructure, definitely, risk averseness towards early technology adoption, high acquisition cost leading to unaffordable TCO. So these are the three factors which I have already mentioned. Lack of charging infrastructure, definitely that is true as far as India is concerned. High acquisition cost, that is also true, basically leading to unaffordable total cost of ownership. Then the risk averseness towards early technology adoption, that is true. Whenever the technology comes, people will not take a risk by using it. They want to see what is going to happen in the next 2 years. What will be the standard? What will be the status? So people are waiting to see how the technology is progressing in the next 2-3 years. Once they know that, okay, people are reluctant to take risk. That is the other hurdle. Now, we will start with before going into an electric vehicle, we will see a hybrid electric vehicle first. It is taken from Toshiba Semicon storage.com website. You can see this is a hybrid electric vehicle block diagram. You can see the engine is present here and there is an electric motor. The electric motor will be driven by the inverter and there is a DC bus. Okay. So there is no additional external charging facility for a hybrid electric vehicle. So there is a DC-DC converter and you can see the other part anyway. There is a battery management unit, drive battery, then the battery will be connected to this one. So the charging, all those things will happen. So this is a normal hybrid electric vehicle which is already available in the market. Only thing is that the drive will not be engine alone. There will be an electric motor for driving the machine. So it's a kind of what you call a together thing. So depending upon the thing. So what will happen? A hybrid electric vehicle combines the advantages of an electric motor and an IC engine. HEVs are primarily driven by an electric motor whenever an IC is not as efficient as an electric motor, otherwise run on the IC engine. During braking, the electric motor works as a generator and recharges a battery by converting the vehicle kinetic energy into electric energy. HEVs can use a smaller drive battery pack than EVs because HEVs rely less on electric motor. So this is the thing. But anyway, we are not bothered about EV basically. But sorry, HEV. Let us see the EV block diagram. You don't see a IC engine now here. It is only electric motor. So the drive is mainly controlled by electric motor itself, but the inverter, DC-DC converter, then the onboard charger, that is the additional thing that you can see. The charging that can happen from the AC mains and the charging that can happen from the charging station. So this is a fast charging and this is going to be the slow charging, which will be from the main supply from the household outlets. Okay, but when you look at as a power electronics engineer, there are 3 power electronic converters present here. One is a DC-DC converter, one is an onboard charger, and the most important part of EV is an inverter, which is going to drive your motor. Depending upon the type of motor, the inverter is going to drive the motor. So inverter is an essential part of any electric vehicle, and today we are going to discuss more about inverters and its control strategies. Okay. So an electric vehicle uses an electric motor for propulsion instead of an internal combustion engine in a conventional IC engine based vehicle. EVs do not use fossil fuel. Instead, they are 100% powered by electrical energy stored in onboard battery packs. During braking, the electric motor works as a generator and recharges the battery by converting the vehicle kinetic energy into electrical energy. There are 2 types of drivetrain design. One in which an electric motor simply replaces an IC engine, that is simple. On one that uses in-wheel motors or motors housed directly on each wheel. So you need to have 4 motors coupled to each. So basically individual control of all the 4 wheels. That is also possible. But the first one is popular and less cost effective, because when you have 4 motors, you need to have 4 different inverters to control them, and you need to have a synchronization between these control and inverters. So it becomes slightly complex in nature as far as the controller design is concerned. But the other one is simple. So HEV or EV, inverter is an essential part. That is what we have seen. Now we will spend our time on inverters, especially a bit more on multi-level inverters if time permits. Okay. Now, when I talk about inverter, I hope all of you are having electrical background and a little bit of electrical power electronics. I assume that all of you know that the power electronics converters can be classified into 4 categories.
The faculties from mechanical and electrical engineering are.
Okay. So mechanical people also will be having some idea about converters. I assume that. That's all. No problem. That's okay. Anyway, I am not going to discuss high technical things. Anyway, I will try to make it as simple as possible. So when you talk about converters, there are 2 types of power supply available, AC and DC. So when the conversion happens, you can have a kind of conversion something like this. There are 2 types of sources available. So from the output also, you can have these 2 types of AC and DC. So you can have a AC-DC converter, you can have a AC to DC converter, you can have a DC to AC converter, you can have a DC-DC converter. So what will happen with AC to AC converter? The input supply is going to fix the magnitude, fix the frequency, and fix the phase AC supply. The output of an AC-AC converter can be variable magnitude, variable frequency, and variable phase. So that is AC to AC converter. There are AC regulators and cycloconverters, which comes under the umbrella of AC to AC converters. Now, when you talk about AC to DC, AC to DC converters, we generally call it as rectifier. Okay. Then DC-DC converter means, sorry, okay, yeah, DC-DC converter, usually we call it as buck boost or boost regulator, like the another thing, step up chopper, step down chopper, or step up down chopper, etc. So basically fixed DC to variable DC, that is DC-DC converter. Next thing, fixed DC to AC converter, we call it as inverter. So inverter is a power electronic converter that converts DC to AC. So fixed DC voltage to AC voltage, which is capable of or we can vary the AC voltage, frequency, magnitude, and phase. So that is what we can do with a DC to AC converter, which is popularly known as inverter. Okay. Now, before going into the inverter, I will start with a simple DC-DC converter. If you look at this circuit diagram, this is a simplest DC-DC converter possible. So you have a voltage V applied, the voltage across the resistor R2, we are defining it as V out, and V out is going to be R2 by R1 plus R2. By properly selecting the ratio of R2 by R1 plus R2, we can control V out. Okay. So basically, V in, if R2 is equal to something like maybe the ratio is made it as 0.33, basically 1 by 3. So R1 plus R2. So R1 is equal to 1K and R2 equal to 1K and R1 equal to 2K. You will get a ratio 1 by 3, right? Yeah, 1K by 2 plus 1, 1 by 3, so 0.33. Now the output voltage is, input is 39, the output is going to be 13 volt. But if you look at the efficiency of conversion, you will see that the ratio of V out by V in itself, that is, the efficiency will be only 33% or 1 by 3 only, because there will be a power dissipation happening in this resistor, which is going to have the entire 26 volt, because this is having only 30 volt. So 26 volt, depending upon the current, you will see that there will be a power loss happening in R1. So the efficiency of conversion is only 33%, which is not an efficient way of doing it, but it is a very simple way of converting DC to DC. Okay. So unacceptable except in very low power applications. Another method, lossless conversion of 39 volt to an average 30 volt. For that, we are using a switch. Switch is basically a power electronic semiconductor device which can be turned on and off. So whenever you turn on the device, the directly 39 volt will come across the load. Whenever you turn off the switch, that voltage will be 0. Now you can select this period dt such a way that the average voltage is 13. For that, you need to be having D is equal to 1 by 3. That means basically if T is equal to 3 millisecond, dt needs to be 1 millisecond, so that D is equal to 1 by 3. So on average, you will get V out across the R stereo as 13 volt average. But it is going to be a pulsating waveform that you are going to apply across the load. Even though the switch is an ideal switch, the losses are 0. The efficiency of conversion is pretty good. So if the duty cycle D of the switch is 0.33 or 1 by 3, then the average voltage to the expensive R stereo is 39 into 0.13 volt DC. This is a lossless conversion, but is it acceptable? Is it acceptable? No. That depends upon the load. Some loads it is okay, but some loads, I hope if you remember the waveform, this will be having a DC component of 13 volt, but it will also having harmonic component. You have already learned about this in your Fourier series. So those harmonic components will create unwanted harmonic currents in the load, which will create excess heating and losses in the zone. So as far as the harmonic losses, this is not an acceptable way of converting. So convert 39 to 30 volts. So you cannot, in order to reduce the, what you call, basically if you say this waveform, you can see that the ripple content in this waveform is pretty large because the variation is from 0 to 39. Now, in order to reduce the ripple content, what will you do? You add a capacitor in parallel with the load. So once you add a capacitor in parallel with the load, what will happen? Can you turn on the switch? If you turn on the switch, what will happen? If you turn on the switch, what will happen here is you are asking the capacitor voltage, assuming that the output is at 13 volt and your input is at 39 volt. You are asking the capacitor voltage to change instantaneously to 39 volt, which is not practically possible unless you pass an infinite current through the switch. Otherwise, the switch will burn. So try adding a large C in parallel with the load to control the ripple. But if the C has 13 volts, then when the switch closes, the source current spikes to a huge value and burns out the switch. So that is not possible with some other element. In order to overcome this problem, we add an inductor. Now turning on the switch is actually pretty simple. You can turn on the switch because the inductor is present. There won't be any large current that will be happening in the capacitor. So the capacitor slowly charges to whatever 39 volt from 13. So there won't be a problem. Now, since there is a continuous current flowing in the inductor, can you turn off the switch? If you turn off the switch, you are actually breaking a current that was flowing through the inductor. That is also not permitted. If you break the current through an inductor, that will create an infinite voltage across the switch, and definitely the switch is going to burn. So try adding in an L to prevent the huge current spike. But now, if the L has current spike, when the switch attempts to open the inductor, current momentum resulting DAB. In order to that, you will be providing a freewheeling path for the current when you are turning off the switch. So this is the most important converter that you might have already learned, known as buck converter. So how the step down chopper has modified into the buck converter by adding inductor, capacitor, and a freewheeling diode is what I have explained. Now, by adding a freewheeling diode, the switch can open and the inductor current can continue to flow through the freewheeling diode. With high frequency switching, the load volt ripple can be reduced to a small value, which is acceptable by properly designing. So this is the thing. Now, you can get V output is equal to D into V in. Now, you all will be thinking, I said that inverter is an essential part of the EV, and I was telling about inverter. Suddenly, I am drawing a circuit diagram to get a buck converter. Okay, fine. Now, assume that I think you know that the D value of a buck converter can vary in the range 0 to 1. Okay. Suppose I vary this D as sine omega t. What will you get at the output? If my D is varied, sine is a variable itself. I am varying it as sine omega t. So the output voltage V is going to be Vm sine omega t or V in sine omega t. This is what you want as a sine wave, right? AC sine wave. So a buck converter, you can get 0 to 1 by having only one buck converter. So if you have two buck converters, one for 0 to 1 and one for 0 to minus 1, you will be able to get positive half cycle of an AC waveform as well as negative half cycle of an AC waveform. That is why, in order to generate a sine wave, the minimum number of switches that you need is actually 2, or 2 controllable switches are required to generate a sine wave from a DC voltage. I hope all of you know that the half bridge converter, which is having 2 switches, are required to generate a single phase AC from a DC component. So that came from this concept only. I hope it is clear. So what is the relation between a DC-DC converter and an inverter? I hope it is clear. Fine. Okay. Yes. Can we move on? Yes. Can we move on? Fine.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Fine. I'm expecting something from some reply from your side. Okay.
Okay, sir. I will give permission to unmute all.
Okay. Okay. So they can. No problem. Okay. Fine. Okay. So I hope all of you understood this. It's pretty simple. Now we will move on to our inverters. So when you talk about inverters is nothing but a DC to AC converter. So your input is going to be, or before that, static power converters that converts DC voltages and currents to AC waveforms are usually known as inverters. And the defined AC waveform that we already use is a sinusoidal. Now, one question comes. Okay, converting a DC voltage to AC waveform and sinusoidal is actually a challenging task. Suppose if we define it as a square wave or a triangular wave, it would have been very easy. Why we defined our AC waveform as sinusoidal? Can we redefine it as a square wave or a triangular wave? What stops us from redefining our AC voltage as square or triangular? Why we keep on saying that our AC voltage should be sinusoidal? What is the reason for it? Can anybody tell? Why we defined our AC voltage as sinusoidal? Why can't we use a square wave or a triangular wave as our AC voltage? Any reason? Anybody?
I think because of the very construction of the rotor coils and other mechanisms, which can only give it as a sinusoidal wave.
I think it's happened the other way around, right? Because you want sinusoidal distribution, you made the coils and the whatever windings of induction machines in that way, so that your flux distribution becomes a flat top sine wave, right? It's not actually a sine wave. If you look at the induction motor, it is a kind of a trapezoidal wave. It's not exactly sine wave that you get. Flux distribution. Any other reason? That is one reason. Okay, I agree. Any other reason? More fundamental reasons? Anybody?
Because of the circular construction, circular nature of the rotor element.
That is okay. That is one aspect that I agree. But there is some fundamental thing that is from the load side, right? Okay, I think if I tell you, all of you will tell it is pretty straightforward. It is very straightforward actually. The sinusoidal waveform, we can call it as the most fundamental waveform in nature. Because any other waveform, periodic or non-periodic or aperiodic, can be represented as a fundamental sine wave, and it's
Like light waves, maybe like light waves, laser.
yeah, anything. Everywhere you will have a fundamental sine wave present in it, because the Fourier series or Fourier transform tells you that any periodic or non-periodic waveform can be represented as a sine wave, plus its harmonic components or multiples of fundamental component frequencies. So sine wave is actually any waveform, there will be a fundamental sine wave present in it. So that is most basic form. That is one thing. Then the second most important aspect as far as electrical engineering is concerned, what are the types of circuit element that you are going to come across in an electrical circuit? The most common
Inductor.
circuit elements. The
Inductors, sir.
resistors, voltage sources,
Inductors.
current sources. After that, inductors and
Yes,
capacitors.
sir.
So when you look at the voltage current relationship of an inductor and capacitor, you will see a differential integral relationship. So when you do the differential integral operation on a sine wave, you are going to get another sine wave which is phase shifted by 90 degree. Okay. If you do any differential integral operation on a square wave or a triangular wave, you are going to get a waveform which is going to be different. Square becomes triangular when it is integrated, and square becomes spikes when it is differentiated. Similarly, triangular becomes square when it is integrated. Sorry, differentiated. Triangular becomes square when it is differentiated, and it becomes kind of parabolic in nature when it is integrated. So this kind of things will happen. So what will happen is, if you use a square wave as your source, you will see that different points and different voltages and currents across different elements in the circuit will be having different wave shape. So the definition of RMS value, all those things will be difficult. But when you have a sine wave present everywhere, you can easily use the phasor concept and the RMS values easily. So this is another important reason for having sinusoidal as a AC waveform. Okay, I hope I made it clear. Okay, that's all, nothing else. Okay, it's very simple. That's what I mentioned. Okay, so when you have a DC voltage having some magnitude given as input, you get an AC voltage at the output. So the inverter converts DC to AC with a fundamental component with adjustable phase, frequency and amplitude meet the needs of a particular application. Okay. So that is obtained using the control code that's known as. This conversion is achieved by the proper control, better known as modulation, of the static power switches that interconnect the DC source to the AC load using the different configuration of conduction state provided by the switch arrangements. Usually we call it as topology. Okay. So fixed DC, variable AC with a variable magnitude, variable frequency and variable phase. This is what we get from an inverter by the proper control bar modulation. Okay. So inverters convert DC voltage to variable magnitude, variable frequency AC voltage. Ideally, we expect a purely sinusoidal output voltage, but practically, so getting a square wave at the output of an inverter from the DC voltage is pretty easy. You can easily generate a square wave. Then what is more challenging is, and all of you know that once you get the square wave at the output of an inverter, it contains a fundamental sine wave and its harmonics. Okay. So the extraction of the fundamental sine wave from the output of the inverter is the most important task. So in order to make it easier, people started looking at different ways. So how can I extract the sine wave from the output of the inverter? How can I make the task of extracting the sine wave from the output of the inverter easier? That is where the PWM techniques came into picture. Practically, it is not possible to generate a pure sine wave from a DC voltage. So we are generating waveforms which are very near to sinusoidal, or which are waveforms from which the extraction of the sine wave will be easier. These are the things that we do. So PWM techniques make the task of extracting sinusoidal voltage from the output of inverter easier. That is one way. Looking at it, PWM techniques have developed because it helps or reduces the effort that we need to put in to extract the fundamental sine wave from the output of the inverter. There are many other ways in which you can look at it. PWM techniques is one which helps us to extract the thing. Now, can you think of strategies to make the output voltage waveforms, the inverter itself, move towards sinusoidal? There are
Using
different.
MLI, sir.
Yes.
Using MLI, multi-level inverter.
Yeah,
If
one
you increase the
aspect.
level of
Yeah, if you look at the way we generate a sine wave in a digital domain, I hope all of you must have used the digital domain for implementing or generating a sine wave. All of you know that the generating a sine wave in a digital domain is using a lookup table, right? If the number of elements in the lookup table increases, the smoothness of the sine wave will be better because the step size will be smaller. Same concept is utilized in multi-level inverter. You increase the number of levels of the output, so you will have a staircase kind of waveform. So if the number of levels are more, you are actually moving towards sinusoidal itself. So that is how the multi-level inverters concept came into picture. Basically, you move the output of the inverter towards sinusoidal. That is the second approach. Third approach is slightly different. The third approach can be understood if you understand something like this. If you remember, the three-phase voltage is nothing but Vm. I hope whatever I am writing you can see. Vm sin omega t. Can you see?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Omega t minus 120. Okay, I will define it as Va, Vb, and Vc. Vm sin omega t minus 240 or plus 120. This is the conventional AC voltage that you get. Now, if you map it into space having A, B, C, which are 120-degree apart in space, and if you represent this at every instant of time, what will you get? What will you get? If you take it at omega t equal to 0, you will get a vector like this at 3 by 2 Vm. Okay? Right? Correct. Do you agree? Have you understood?
Sir, someone said B and C should be interchanged in the chat box, sir.
B and C should be interchanged. Okay, no problem. That is depending upon how you look at it. That's all. Okay. No, it should be A, B, C only. No, I am trying to rotate. At pi by 2, it will come here. Okay. At pi by 2, it will come here. 3 by 2 Vm. This is at 0. At pi by 2. At pi, it will come here. Approximately. I am drawing it approximately. Okay. So same magnitude. Basically, I want to tell only one thing. So this can be represented, three-phase system can be represented as a rotating vector or a rotating phasor having same magnitude, and the rotational velocity will be dependent on the frequency of the supply or omega radians per second. Okay. So that is the thing. Basically, it is a three-phase system. Whatever voltage that you give can be represented as a rotating vector having constant magnitude. Now, if you take the locus of these points, when it travels one cycle, what will you get? You will be getting a circle. So that is an important thing. So basically, if you can create a circular locus, you are going to get a sine wave. So people started looking at it. Okay. So this circular trajectory, is it clear? Keep this circular trajectory in mind. We will come back to it a little bit later. And at that time, I will tell you about the third way of looking at the sine wave thing. Okay, this you keep it in mind. So two things we have discussed, that is inverters, PWM techniques and multi-level inverters. Okay. So DC to AC converter can be classified into two categories depending upon the source. There are many ways in which you can do it. One is current source inverters, voltage source inverters. Now the pulse width modulated current source inverters are the load commutated current source inverters are the, when you look at the voltage source inverter, the one classification that there is no connection here. Okay. Okay, there is no connection here. Voltage source inverter can be either a multi-level inverter or a classical two-level voltage source inverter. So this is one way of classifying it. There are many ways in which you can do it. Depending upon the number of phases, also you can do the single phase and three phase. Depending upon that way also you can do the classification. This is only one way, which is for our convenience. I have taken it. That's all. Okay. So the DC source is usually composed of a rectifier followed by an energy storage or a filter. Usually we call it as DC length in indirect conversion. CSIs or the current source inverter have been dominating in the medium voltage high power range with the pulse width modulated current source inverter and the load commutated inverter. That was high power range usually preferred, but single phase and three phase two level VSIs are widely used in low and medium power application. Recently, VSIs have also become attractive in the medium voltage high power market with the advent of multi-level inverter topologies. That is the thing that is happening in industry recently. Okay. So we will start with the two-level voltage source inverter, which is familiar to most of you. Maybe the people with mechanical background may not be able to know it, but still it is pretty simple because I am talking about 6 switching combinations only. The load is an induction motor. You can ignore the load as the time being. So I will define some of the quantities that you need to know. You can see here point A, point B, point C. We call it as poles of inverter. Okay. So you can define some voltages here. VA capital N. Capital N is the negative of the terminal voltage. So VB capital N, VC capital N. These three voltages we define it as pole voltages of the inverter. Okay. So pole voltages is midpoint of the inverter and the negative terminal of the DC source. Okay. So that is known as pole voltage. Now another voltage that you can define is VA, the neutral point or the common point of the load. We define it as phase voltage. So similarly, you can have VBN and VCN. These are phase voltages of the inverter. Now you can have another voltage VAB, VBC and VCA between the midpoints. We call it as line voltages. So these are the three terminologies what we need to understand. So pole voltages, phase voltage and line voltage. Now, when the switch S11 is closed, if you close this switch, the voltage at this point is going to be VDC. Okay. Now, when this switch is closed, this switch needs to be open. So when you have that kind of a condition, you cannot turn on the switches S11 and S14 simultaneously. Whenever S11 is closed, S14 has to be kept off. So such a combination is known as complementary switches. So if you look at this one, S14, S16, S12 are complementary pairs with respect to S11, S13 and S15 respectively. So S11 and S14 are complementary, S13 and S16 are complementary, S15 and S12 are complementary. That means even though there are 6 switches in this topology, we are having only 3 independent switches. Okay, there are only 3 independent switches available in this topology. Now, when you turn on S11, definitely S14 will be open. So the voltage at this point is VDC. Now, another thing possible is keep S11 off and turn on S14. So A will be directly connected to N and the voltage will be 0. So at the point A, B or C, at the poles of the inverter, we can realize 2 voltage levels, that is VDC or 0. Since there are two possible pole voltages at the poles of the inverter, we call this inverter as a two-level inverter. So the level of an inverter is actually decided by the number of voltage levels that can be realized at the pole of an inverter. In this case, the pole A, B or C, we can realize the voltages VDC and 0. So two voltage levels are possible at the poles of the inverter, and that's why we call this as a conventional two-level inverter. I hope it's clear why this is a two-level inverter. Okay. So this I have already mentioned. VAN, VBN, VCN are known as pole voltages. VAN, again it is okay. Only thing the difference is N capital and N negative. So the small letter N is corresponding to the load side and capital N is corresponding to the source side. So the pole voltages are with respect to the source side and the phase voltages are with respect to the load side. Now, VAB, VBC and VCA are known as the line voltages. Now, if you look at the voltage between the common point of the load and the negative of this one, so we can define it as VNN. Okay. So if you look at here, this voltage between the negative
Sir,
Just a minute, participants. Kindly wait.
sir,
hello, I think somehow it got muted. Is it right?
yes, sir.
Sorry. I think somehow I clicked on the mute or something. Something happened. Okay, I think I was talking about the voltage between the negative terminal of DC bus and the load, right? We define it as VNN. Okay. So if you do that, you will be getting VNN can be written as VNA plus VAN or VNB plus VBN. That is sum of the pole voltages, sorry, phase voltage and pole voltage. Okay. So it is going to be VNC and VCN. So if you add these three equations, you can write 3 times VNN is equal to sum of the pole voltages plus sum of the phase voltages. Okay. So this is what we get. Now, as far as a three-phase system is concerned, always we will have at every instant sum of the phase voltages are 0. So if you do that, the voltage VNN can be defined as sum of the pole voltages by 3. So ideally you want this voltage to be 0. We call it as actually common mode voltage. But in practice, you will see that in the case of a two-level inverter and all, you will see some common voltage coming into picture, depending upon the switching combination that we use. Okay. So this is as far as the two-level inverter is concerned. Now we will try to see the operation of a two-level inverter. I hope there are without PWM, the two-level inverter which I have already mentioned can operate in two modes. We call it as 120-degree mode or 180-degree mode. In 180-degree mode, the switch will be conducting for 180-degree as I have shown here. So this is corresponding to the 180-degree mode of operation. So in 120 degree mode, instead of 180 degree, each switch will be conducting only for 120 degree. That's the difference. Okay. But anyway, it will give you similar results. But what is more important is you can see here. This is the pole voltage is shown here. Pole voltage VAN, VBN, and VCN. Okay. 0, it is VDC for when the switch was on, and it is 0. Again, VDC after 2 pi like that. Okay. So when you have this one, you will get a phase voltage. You will see that phase voltage is something like this. Okay. So the voltage levels are VDC, 0, and minus VDC. So there are 2 levels in the pole voltage. Now number of levels in the line voltage is actually 3, right? You are having VDC, 0, and minus VDC. Similarly, VBC also will be having VDC, 0, and minus VDC. Okay. Now look at the phase voltage. If you see the phase voltage in 180 degree mode, it is going to be something like this. Okay. I think you can see it. Yeah. This is the phase voltage that you get. So it has VDC by 3, then 2 VDC by 3, then minus VDC by 3, and minus 2 VDC by 3. And if you consider this as 0, it is, you will see that it is actually 5 voltage levels, you can say, but the waveform usually we call it as something called as 6-step waveform. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you will see 6 steps from here to here. One phase cycle will be having 6 steps. So 6-step operation we call it as. So it will be having nearly 5 levels. So this is the kind of waveform that we get without any PWM or anything, directly by switching it, turning it on for 180 degree duration. Similarly, you can do it for 120 degree also. But if you look at the FFT of the phase voltage, you will see that the fundamental component is here. Then the next, there is no second harmonic. The next one is, so there won't be any third harmonic also, right? So even will be absent. All even harmonics will be absent because it is a square wave that you are getting. All even harmonics will be absent. Similarly, third and multiples of 3 will be absent. So you will see that the dominant are going to be 5th and 7th. Then it will be 11th and 13th. Like that it will go. Because 9 is multiple of 3, it won't be there. Then 15 will not be there. Then it will be 17 and 19 will come. This is 17 and 19. Like that it will come. Okay, that will go on. So this is the kind of FFT that you get at the 2-level voltage source inverter in 180 degree mode operation. Okay. So this is, okay, I think. This is the expression for the phase voltage using the Fourier series. Okay. 2 VDC by pi into sine omega t, which is the fundamental component. Okay. This is the fundamental component. Then 5th, 7th, 11th, 13th, like that it will go. Then 17th, 19th, which I have already shown in the FFT. Now, we will try to look at it in a different way, something known as a space vector structure. Same inverter, same thing. I am trying to look at in a different structure. Okay. So 2 possible pole voltages values at any instant. I hope all you know that now because we have already discussed it. VDC and V0 generates a hexagonal voltage space vector structure. How that happens, we will see. Any point within the hexagon can be generated by switching in an average sense. That is what we do in space vector PWM. Any reference vector is generated in average sense using volt-second balance. This is what we do in a space vector PWM. Okay. So I already mentioned that there are six switches present, but only 3 are independent switches, right? So when you have only 3 independent switches, how many switching combinations are possible using 3 switches, 3 independent switches? How many switching combinations are possible? 8. Yeah,
6.
absolutely right. 2 raised to 3. 8 switching combinations are possible. 8 switching combinations are shown here. When all the 3 are off, you will get all points connected to 0 voltage. And all the 3 are on, all will be connected to 111 VDC. So when all are connected to VDC, A, B, and C are at VDC, the resultant again is going to be 0. So when the top switch is on and it is connected to VDC, we take it as 1. So when all the 3 are connected this year, all are going to be at VDC, and if you calculate the resultant, it will be 0. When all the switches are off, again it will be connected to 0. Definitely it will be 0. So those 2 cases are shown as 0, 0, and 1, 1. Now, only A phase is connected to VDC, B and C are connected to 0. That is how we represent it as 1, 0, 0. So 1, 0, 0, it will be VDC along A axis. So you will get the vector here, other 2 are 0. Now, A and B are connected to VDC. A and B are connected to VDC. C is connected to 0. So A is VDC, B is also VDC. So the resultant is VDC along. So because this is 120 degree, automatically this will be VDC and this angle is going to be 60 degree. Okay. This angle. Okay. Then only B is on. B is connected to VDC. The other 2 are 0. So directly it will be along B and VDC magnitude. Now B and C are connected to VDC. A is connected to 0. So B and C are connected to VDC. B and C. Then the resultant will be here. Now only C connected to VDC. That will give you along C. Then finally A and C are connected to VDC. A and C are connected to VDC. B is connected to 0. So all the 8 switching combinations we have considered, and you will see that the 8 switching combinations, out of which 2 will be giving a resultant 0 vector, that we call it as 0 vectors. So there are 2 0 vectors, which gives a resultant 0 and should be marked at the center. The other 6 vectors which give a magnitude of VDC, we call it as 6 active vectors. Now, if you look at this one, the 6 active vectors actually creates a regular hexagon, right? If you join these 6 vectors, you will get a regular hexagon. So now I come to the thing. Suppose you wanted to generate a sine wave. We have already seen it as the locus of the points through which the reference vector or the vector that represents the 3-phase system moves is actually a circle. So if you draw a circle with VDC, something like this, okay. If you want to generate a sine wave 3-phase system whose whatever 3/2 Vm I mentioned, right? 3/2 Vm is equal to VDC. If you want to generate such a thing, you need to have a circle like this. Okay. Okay. The locus is going to be a circle like this. 3/2 Vm is equal to VDC. Now, if you want to have a sine wave, you need to have an inverter which will give you infinite vectors starting from here. Every instant you need vector. So if you are having infinite vectors spaced very near to each other throughout the circle, if you can realize a physical inverter which will give you infinite number of vectors which are spaced very close to each other, so that At every point in the circle from 0 to 360 degree, if a vector is available, you will be able to generate a sine wave. Do you agree with that? I am having an inverter which is capable of producing infinite vector starting from here to here, and it will be filling the entire circle. If I am capable of generating such an inverter, I am saying practically I can make a sine wave. Do you agree or not? Right? Clear? Is it clear? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. I hope you understood the concept. So if it is possible to have an inverter which is capable of producing infinite vectors spaced very close to each other in the entire circle, we will be able to generate sine wave. But practically using a two-level inverter, we get only 6 vectors. So whenever the vector or the required sine wave is in this region, it can be when it is rotating from this point. I need to remove the. Okay. Okay. Whenever the sine wave will be rotating like this. Okay. So it can be in this region. It can be in this. Okay. It can be here. It can be here. It can be here or here. So 0 to 360 degree, you can divide it into 60 degrees of 6, or if you say in a time domain, 20 millisecond. If it is the 50 hertz waveform, it is 20 millisecond. So 20 millisecond by 6, 20 by 6 milliseconds, it will be in this region. We call it a sector 1. And this 20 by 6, it will be sector 2. Like that, sector 3, sector 4, sector 5, sector 6. So whenever it is in sector 1, during that period, we will be using these two vectors. We call it as V1 and V2, and the 0 vectors. On an average basis, we will be generating. It can be anywhere here. Similarly, in sector 2, it will be V2 and V3. Similarly, when your required vector is in sector 3, we will be using V3, V4 and 0 vectors. When it is in sector 4, we will be using V4, V5 and 0 vectors. Like that, it will continue. Depending upon the sector in which the required vector is present, we will use the nearest active vectors and 2 0 vectors on an average basis, so that you will be generating the required vector in an average sense. Any reference vector is generated in an average sense using volt second balance. That is what we are going to see now. Okay. So what we try to do here is, okay, so here the reference vector is shown in sector 2. Okay. So when you say sector 2, the nearest active vectors are V2 and V3. So this is the region in which it is present. Okay. So we will be applying V2 for some time and V3 for some time and 0 vectors for some time. So how much time it needs to be done? We will be doing it using a volt second balance. So what we will do is, we will apply such that, I think it is, okay, this is the reference vector that we have selected. So that theta will give you V alpha and V. Okay. So if you, I think I will do it in a different way. It will be easier to understand. So what will I do is, I will apply V2 vector for a period. Okay. I think this is used T1 and T2. Maybe it is better. I will use it in, explain it in a different way. 1 minute. It can be explained using this also. Only thing, they have used T1 and T2 and here V2, V3. It may be slightly confusing. I will take a different vector. I am taking a vector here. Okay, let this be equal to theta. So that it will be directly V1 and V2 now. Because I am considering it as sector 1. Now in that case, what will happen? This I am calling it as VS or V reference, whatever, VS. Okay. So I will be applying VS into TS. Okay. That should be equal to V1 into T1. It's a vector actually. V1 is a vector. V1 into T1 plus V2 into T2. The other thing that is not going to create anything because V0, we will apply V0. Sorry, I think I have gone out of the thing. Plus the 0 vectors into another period T0. Okay. V0, there are two ways you can realize. We call it as V7 and V8. Okay. So that will be divided into T0 by 2 and T0 by 2 respectively. But magnitude wise, they don't have 0. So it will not add anything to the vector addition. So what will happen here is VS TS is going to be a vector like this. Okay. Okay. Now V2 T2 is going to be another vector in this line, and V1 T1 is going to be something like this. Now what we will do here is so that this is the thing. This vectorial addition will always be satisfied. So V1 into T1 plus V2 into T2 will be equal to Vs into Ts. So that will be always satisfied. From that, you can derive an expression for T1 and T2. Once you get that, you will be able to derive the expression for T0, and T0 will be split into T0 by 2 and T0 by 2 respectively. I hope this is understood. We know the value of theta. We know the value of Vs. We know the value of Ts. We know the value of V1 and V2 because both are VDC. Only unknown quantities are T1 and T2. So from the what you call the dividing it into horizontal and vertical component, you can easily do it. I think all of you know it. So if this is theta, Vs Ts into cos theta will be equal to V1 T1 plus V2 T2 cos 60. This is going to be one equation. Okay. Similarly, Vs Ts sin theta will be equal to, there won't be any component. It will be V2 T2 sin 60. Okay. So from that, you can directly get T2. T2 is going to be Vs Ts sin theta divided by V2 sin 60. That is what we got here. V2 is nothing but VDC. Here they have taken instead of alpha. Okay, I have taken it as theta. That's the only difference. Is it clear? Once you get T2, you can get the value of T1 because substituting T2 in this equation, you will get an expression for T1 from the first expression. Is it clear? This is what we do in the space vector PWM. Okay? Clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Now, I mentioned about PWM, then multi-level inverter, and then I said that I will talk about the third methodology in a different way. Now, people have thought about moving this space vector structure from hexagon to circle. For that, people have come up with inverters which can give you something like this. Okay. One more vector here, VDC, same magnitude. Okay, one vector here, one vector here. Topologies people have developed. Okay. So if you join this, what will happen? What will you get? So you will have vector here also. What will you call it? It was a hexagon. Now I have added 6 more vectors into it. Definitely it becomes a 12-sided polygon, right? This becomes a 12-sided polygon. Okay. So when you have a 12-sided polygon, 12 vectors are there. So basically, you are trying to increase the number of vectors that will be present. Can you tell that you are moving towards sinusoidal in that way? Yeah, you can make it a 18-sided polygon now, so that there will be 18 vectors. You can make it a 24-sided polygon. You can make it a 48-sided polygon. If you go on increasing the number of sides of the polygon, you are actually moving towards circle. That is another way of moving towards sinus. Way in using PWM, make the extraction easier. Another way, increase the number of steps so that you move towards sinusoidal. Increase the number of sides of the space vector structure that you generate at the output of the inverter and move towards it into a circle. So these are the three ways in which you move towards sinusoidal waveform at the output of the inverter. I hope this concept is also clear, because I'm not going to talk more. I'm not going to talk more about the multi-sided polygonal structure, but I think people have already done a lot of research, and if you say for the look at the IEEE transaction, there are many papers on this also, 12-sided, 18-sided, 24-sided polygonal thing. And 12-sided polygon and multi-level can be combined. And 18-sided polygon and multi-level inverter can be combined. Those kind of research also people have done. Okay, you can look into it later. Okay. Now we will move into a bit of multi-level inverters. I tried to finish it because I think I am lacking 10 to 15 minutes. So multi-level inverters usually looking at the YZ medium voltage high power range where current source inverters were the dominating thing. So this is the kind of power range multi-level inverters. So I think I have already mentioned all these things. So the problem for two-level inverters, when you go for medium voltage high power drives, the large dV by dt, because you need to switch between 0 and the entire VDC. VDC usually of the order of maybe the 2000 or something, will create a large dV by dt. Motor harmonic losses will increase. This can be a LC filter, but the problem is increased manufacturing cost, fundamental voltage drop in the filter. These are the major problems, so people can't use it. That's why usually we don't go for a two-level inverter for a high power medium voltage drive. But as the multi-level inverter, you can see this is a 2-level phase voltage and a 9-level phase voltage, you can see. And from the waveform itself, you can see that you are moving towards sinusoidal by increasing the number of step size. That's pretty clear. We have already discussed about it, so I don't want to spend much more time on this. Basically, we are moving towards sinusoidal waveform by moving into the multi-level inverter. So 2-level inverter will give you a hexagonal structure. 3-level inverter will give you same hexagonal structure, but you have more number of voltages present, so that the instantaneous error will be less. Then in 5-level also same area will remain the same, but the number of vectors will be more, so that the error with respect to the source reference vector that you generate will be less. So we are moving towards sinusoidal. Basically, you will have a very near if you look at here, the nearest vectors are these two and the 0 vectors. But when you come here, the nearest vectors are here. So if you look at the instantaneous error, it is this much, but here it is only this much. Okay, and 0. Now if you come here, the nearest vectors are here, and again the instantaneous error will come down, and you will see that this is the thing that will happen. Now 2-level to 12-sided polygon. Sorry, this is a hexagonal thing I have already shown. Now with respect to the 12-sided, it will look like something like this. This is a 24-sided. Is it 24-sided? No, it is a 30. How many sides? Yeah, 24-sided, right? Yeah, 12. Yeah.
ஏப்பா இதுக்கு அட்டெண்டன்ஸ் தனியா கொடுத்துக்கறாங்களா எலக்டிவ்க்கு?
So this is the kind of thing that I have mentioned. This is the top is actually the 12-side, is a multi-level structure. This is multi-level plus the number of sides of the polygonal thing. So you can see that this is a normal 12-sided polygon. This is a 3-level, and this is a 5-level 12-sided polygonal. Okay, this is 5-level, and this is 3-level, but 12-sided polygon. So again, in 24-sided also you can do the similar thing. 24-sided also you can do it. I hope you understood the concept. That is only what I explained. So advantages of the 12-sided structure, directly you can eliminate the 5th and 7th directly. That is one advantage. When you have 5th and 7th, directly you can make it 0. That is the most important advantage that you get by going into the 12-sided polygon. Okay. So the predominant harmonics will be at 11 and 13 only. So the one important advantage, directly you can design filter, because the fundamental and the 11th, there is a large gap. So the designing of the filter becomes easier. Advantages of Dodectic. In the hexagonal switching 6-step operation, 0.63, and the linear modulation is 0.577. So this is the kind of ratio that you get. In 12-step, it is 0.659, end of linear modulation. So the ratio is 97 points. So this is the kind of thing. From 6 hexagonal to 12-sided, you can get, assuming that 50 Hertz, 90%, you will get 45.3. Here it is almost 98%. That is 48 Hertz you can do. Okay. So this is the kind of comparison you can do. Anyway, you don't need to worry much about it. So we will move on to the multi-level inverter. I think I will take for 10 minutes more. That's all. Okay. So when you look at the multi-level inverter, n levels are possible at the pole of an inverter. So here you can say when the switch is connected, here it is 0. Here it will be V1. Here it will be V1 plus V2. Here it will be V1 plus V2 plus etc. And finally you will get V1 plus V2 plus etc. up to Vn. Okay. So if they are equal, you will see that NV will come into picture. So it will be V, 2V, 3V, 4V, 5V, etc. up to NV will come. All are equal, assuming that all are equal. Okay. So the multi-level inverters are the preferred choice in industry for the application in high voltage and high power application. Advantages of multi-level inverters. Higher voltages can be generated using the devices of lower rating. Increased number of voltage levels produce better voltage waveforms and reduced THT. Switching frequency can be reduced for the PWM operation. The number of switchings can be reduced. So the multi-level converter topologies can be classified into 3 categories conventionally, traditional. NPC inverter. This is the NPC inverter topology, and this is known as flying capacitor topology, and this is known as cascaded H-bridge topology. All 3 have something in common. Only difference is that here you have something known as neutral point clamping capacitors, sorry, diodes. We call it as diode clamped also. Instead of these diode clamps, you will see capacitors coming into picture. So the capacitors are replacing diode clamps. Now here the capacitors and the diodes are not present. You will have individual sources. So 2 different sources are going to get connected. So NPC inverter, very simple structure, industry standard as of now, a large number of diodes. That is a disadvantage. Capacitor midpoint balancing issues are one of the most important problems associated with NPC inverter. Flying capacitor used in industry for low power. Low power drives, no clamping diodes requirement, large number of capacitors required. Cascaded H-bridge low voltage devices, requirement of many isolated DC power supplies. Commercial systems available up to 17 level topology. Okay. This is the kind of simple 3-level NPC topology. You will see that in the conventional 2-level topology, there were only 2 switches in a link. Now we will be having 4 switches in a link. So I will tell how it becomes a 3-level topology. I am taking the pole A with respect to the N here. Okay, let it be N here. So with respect to that, if you say that this is at 0, this becomes at VDC by 2 and this becomes at VDC. Okay, or VD. Okay, in this case it is VD and VD by 2 and VD. So this is VD by 2 midpoint voltage. This is at VD. Now, by turning on switches S1 and S2 simultaneously, the voltage at this point will be VD. So that is one voltage. Now turning on switches S3 and S4 simultaneously, you get 0. So when you turn on switches S3 and S2, this pole will be connected to midpoint. The voltage will be VD by 2. Now, at the pole of the inverter, depending upon the direction of the current, if the current is in this direction, okay, if the current is from A is in this direction, so what will happen? Okay, current can be this direction or this direction. If this is in this direction, it will be flowing here. If it is here, it will flow this way. So either the switch of S2 or S3 will conduct depending upon the current, and it will be connected to midpoint. And when switches S2 and S3 are on, this point voltage VD by 2 will come. When both S1 and S2 are on, it will be VD. Both S3 and S4, it will be 0. So the number of voltage levels possible at the pole of the inverter is now 3. That's why it is a 3-level inverter. Similarly, at pole B and pole C also we can realize 3 voltage levels. That's why it is a 3-level inverter. So the 2 switches in a link increases to 4 switches in a link. So 4 into 3, you need 12 switches. In the case of 2-level inverter, it was 3 into 2, 6 switches. Now in addition, there will be 2 clamping diodes per phase. So it will be 6 clamping diodes and 2 capacitors for splitting the voltage into VD by 2 respectively. Okay. So this is the additional requirement that is required in a 3-level inverter compared to a conventional 2-level inverter. Okay. So this we have already discussed, so leave it. So this is the kind of space vector structure that you get. So this is okay. These are the points that you get. So there are 3 voltage levels possible, right? VD, VD by 2 and 0. So that can be written as plus VD by 2, assuming defining the midpoint voltage as 0. You will get it as plus VDC by 2 and minus VDC by 2. Midpoint I am defining it as 0. If you do that way, you will get it. So this is the point when A phase is connected to plus VD by 2 and the other 2 phases are connected to minus VD by 2. You will get this. So 0 means midpoint. So depending upon that, you will see that how many space vector points locations you will get. 1 here, 6 plus 12, 19 locations, but 3 at the middle, 6 into 2 plus 12. So 27 vectors. So if you remember, there were 8 vectors, 2 raised to 3. There should be 3 raised to 3. That will be 27 vectors in a 3-level inverter. 2-level inverters, 8 vectors. 3-level inverters, 27 vectors. Now for a 4-level inverters, it will be 4 cube. It will be 64 vectors. And for a 5-level inverters, there will be 125 vectors. Like that it will go. Okay. Now the location will depend. For a 2-level inverter, there were 7 locations. Now 3-level inverters, there were only 19 locations. So we can derive an expression for it. Okay. Okay, this is a 3-level space vector structure showing the what do you call it? 19 vectors starting from V0 to V18. Okay, there will be 19 vectors. Okay, so 19 vectors, but V6, V1 to V6, there will be 2 ways in which you can realize. 2 switching combinations will give you the voltage vectors V1 to V6. Similarly, V0 can be realized in 3 ways. Okay. So the locations are only 19 vectors. So 19 space vector locations. So 6 into sigma m equal to 1 up to n minus 1 plus 1 will be the number of levels, the number of space vector locations. So if for a 3 level, it is going to be 6 into sigma m equal to 1 to n minus 1, 2. So 1 plus 2 plus 1. So 6 into 3, 18 plus 1, 19. So for a 4 level inverters, what will happen? 6 into 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 1. So 6 into 6, 36 plus 1, 37 locations. Vectors are 40, 64. Now for a 5 level, it will be 6 into 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 1. 7, 10, 60. 61 locations, you will have 125 vectors. So what will happen here is, so for a 3 level, mid 3, 2, 1. For a 4 level, it becomes 4, 3, 2, and 1 more will come. For a 5 level, the middle 0 vectors will be 5 ways. Next vectors will be 4, 3, 2, 1. Like that it will go. There is a pattern. Everywhere you can identify a pattern and you can easily keep it in mind. I think I will show it here. This is a 4 level and 5 level NPC structure. You can see the complexity increases because in each phase, here you can see that this is 2 plus 1, 3 plus 3. 6 diodes are there in one phase itself. For 5 level, you will see there are 6 diodes per phase. Here, 3 plus 1, 4, 4, 8 plus 4, 12 diodes in one phase. So 12 into 3, total 36 diodes. Here it becomes 6 into 3, 18 diodes. So the complexity increases as the number of levels increases. The switching combination pretty simple to understand. So this is a 5-level space vector structure. You can start from 0 and the location will be 60. 0 to 60 means, as we have seen, 61 locations. So it is nothing but 6 into 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 1. So it is 61. Okay. But if you look at the vectors, here there will be 5. Here there will be 4 each at all locations, 3 each, 2 each, and 1 each. So if you add those things, 5 cube, it will be 125 vectors will come into picture. Okay. So this is a kind of component converter. You can see that the number of the clamping diodes increases non-linearly. That's why people usually go for an NPC inverter in 3 level only, nothing more than that. Practically, people won't use. So the industry people are using 3 level inverter in NPC mode. Other than that, it will be either cascaded, H-bridge, or flying capacitor, depending upon the application. Okay. That's all from the thing. Only thing, flying capacitor, what will happen is clamping diodes will be replaced with a capacitor. That's all. VDC by 2, same thing. So the all other operation remains the same. Space vector structure, all other things remains the same. There is no difference. I know I am going a little bit fast because I think the time given to me is already over. So I want to just quickly finish it. That's all. So this is a 5-level structure. Only thing, instead of clamping diodes, you will have a combination of capacitors which comes from 4, 3, 2, 1. There is a pattern here also. But only thing, the number of capacitors increases. The voltage levels and realization will be exactly similar. There is no other difference. The space vector structure also will be there. But only thing, the clamping diodes are 0. You don't need clamping diodes, but you need large number of capacitors, and the maintaining active switches exactly the same. This is the thing. Clamping capacitors, the number increases. As the number increases, large number of capacitors and balancing them will be a tedious task. Now comes the cascaded H-bridge thing, which requires isolated supply like this. These 3 supplies needs to be isolated. So you will get a 3-level structure. You need 2 cascaded bridges to get 5 level. So that means only odd number of levels are possible in a cascaded. But it is not practically possible to have a 4-level inverter possible. 3, 5, 7 are possible. When one H bridge only is there, it will be 3 level. When 2 H bridges are cascaded, it becomes 5 level. When 3 H bridges are cascaded, it becomes 7 level. So the even number of levels are not practically realizable, assuming that the all H bridges are going to have equal voltages. Okay, so other structure remains the same. Now, anyway, this is 7 and 9. Okay, 3 H bridge cascaded you will get you 9, and 4 cascaded will give you 9. Sorry, 3 cascaded 7 and 4 cascaded 9. This is a kind of I think till now we were talking about the equal voltages. Okay, all were having equal voltages, but if you can make it in a unequal voltage, because it is isolated sources, it is possible. So E and 2E directly with 2 cells, you will be able to get a 7 level thing. E and E we are giving you only 5, but E and 2E you will be able to realize a 7 level inverter, asymmetric topology. Now, if the ratio is 1:2, it becomes 7 level. But if the ratio is 1:3, it becomes a 9 level topology. So using 2 H bridges and the voltages in the ratio 1:3, you can make a 9 level inverter. The advantage problem is if you need 50 volt here, this needs to be 150 volt. So you need to have 2 isolated sources, but solar PV, etc. and all, we can easily do that. So people are going into it because 9 level inverter using cascading only 2 H bridges, that's a pretty good thing. Okay. There are some of the things. Component count, if you look at clamping diodes 0, but you need isolated DC sources. So as the number of levels increases, the number increases. Only thing, if you go for asymmetric, you don't need this many, only in the not same sources, but in the ratio of 1:3. Okay, I don't want to spend on open-end winding. This is an entirely different consideration. I think with that, I will wind up. I'm really sorry that I exceeded the time limit which was given. So in the end portion, I just gone through it pretty fast. I know that it is pretty difficult for you to understand, but I hope at least I justified my title inverters from square to sine. That point is pretty clear. How you can extract sine wave from the output of the inverter in 3 different ways. That is, or the 3 different what you call the philosophy behind people going for different techniques: PWM, space vector structure, hexagonal, and multi-sided or polygonal space. With that, I will wind up. These are some of the references that I have used for preparing this PPT. I think with that, I wind up. Thank you for your person listening as well as the nice interaction which you have already had. With that, I will wind up. If you are having anything to ask, you can ask now.
Participants, you have any questions, please.
Sir?
Participants?
Yes. Yeah,
Sir?
continue.
Sir, a controller, any new type of controller, have you worked and you got the result? Kindly mention the name, sir.
No,
Controller.
no, the terminology controller depends upon many aspects. Actually, are you talking about the PWM controller or the controller that I am used for controlling the load or anything? Or the inverter?
PWM controller, sir.
PWM controller can be, that depends, the PWM, okay, sine triangle PWM, all of you know. Space vector PWM, all of you know, right?
Sir.
Okay, there are different ways of...
Asymmetrical we have tried, sir.
No, asymmetrical is only a topology. The control has to be either whatever you use, space vector or the sine triangle thing. No, the thing is that the control complexity depends upon the number of switches that you are having, right? Because the controller must be able to drive all the switches.
Closed loop simulation, sir. We need some. So for
when
that,
you talk about the closed loop simulation, there will be a load coming into picture.
Yes,
the
sir.
load, if it is induction motor or any other load, the load dynamics will differ. So assume that you are going to think about a induction motor as a load. Then the controller has another role to play, because the controller is supposed to look at the reference speed or the reference torque which is to be provided to the machine. So the controller objective is different. So the controller will be controlling the inverter to provide required speed and torque to the machine. Okay. So there can be different types of control from the machine side. One example is you can use a V by F control. You can use a vector control. You can use a DTC. You can use a what you called model predictive control. Many control logic are possible, right? So there are many aspects, but vector control is the most popular, and what you call the analysis becomes pretty simple using a model, what you call the FOC, field oriented, or a vector control. As far as induction motor is concerned, if the load is different, then the control also will be different. If it is a BLDC, if it is a PMSM, the control will be different. Depending upon the motor, it will change. Because motor model is an important aspect, how you model the machine. So depending upon that, the control also will change.
Apart from simulation, MATLAB, any other goods, PS card like that for power electronics?
Power electronics, there used to be many software, but nowadays MATLAB Power System Toolbox is the best. MATLAB Simulink. Because there used to be Sabre and all, but now it is not that good. Because there is no update and all happening. SQL was there, but commonly used MATLAB is the better tool.
Okay.
Because the other things and all, it will be difficult to get help. MATLAB, many people uses it, you will be
Fine.
able to get it easily. The help
Yes.
and the simulation part can be easily completed. MATLAB is the better thing now.
Yes, sir. Excellent presentation, sir. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, thank you.
Participants, still any questions is there?
I think
Participants?
some chat box I have seen something. 1 minute,
Yeah.
I think. Apart from Rockwell, which are the other suppliers? I think not Rockwell Automation alone. The Semicron makes inverters. Toshiba makes inverters. There are many. N-tuple actually makes inverters. There are many companies which makes inverters and supplies in India. Semicron is very popular. Toshiba is also popular.
Okay. Participants, still any questions is there? You can ask. Otherwise, I will conclude the today's session. Okay, sir. Very nice presentation, sir. By participants are presenting a nice presentation. Sir, Rijit Raman, sir, Ramchandran, sir, your presentation is very good. In inverters for EV systems evaluation from square to sinusoidal. This sir covered the overall topic like future of mobility in India and real hurdles to EV adoption, and about battery, tri-battery explained, and about importance of inverter in EV, types of converters, AC to AC, AC to DC, DC to DC, like that. Even I'm a mechanical engineer. I came to know so many aspects about this electric vehicle through sir. And sir explained about 2-level voltage source inverter and 2-level inverters, and space vector modulation, multi-level inverters, constraints of the turbo inverters, and evaluation of multi-level space vector structures, and advantages of dot kernel SV structure, and multi-level voltage source inverter, and diode clad NBC 3-level, 4-level, 5-level inverters, and flying capacitors 3-level inverters. So sir covered a lot within this 1.5 hour. Thank you, sir. Your presentation is very nice. I hope that many people have a knowledge about these inverters, and they will be implementing in their projects, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your nice presentation, sir, and thanks for your valuable time with us for this wonderful FDP, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.